Hi, everybody. I wanted to come on here today and share some thoughts that I'm having. And so I've asked Spirit to assist me in channeling the message that I'm basically receiving. So I want to talk about separation and fear energy. And I want to talk about it because I want to talk about individually what this creates, and then I want to talk about collectively what this creates. And separation starts with ourselves, or love, or connection. So what I keep thinking about today is many of us are living life and we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're saying things we're supposed to say, right? But there's this whole other vibration that's happening inside of our minds and in our hearts that we don't share with others. Introspection. We are at times very black and white in our thoughts and in our ways of being. There's right or wrong, good or bad. And there's much more than that to the experience, to each of our experiences. So what I keep thinking about is, let's say we're going through our individual journeys and there's parts of ourselves that there's fear energy in all of us, okay? It just exists, and there's different fears that we have. I could have a fear of heights, but somebody else couldn't, right? So for myself, that would be a limitation. I actually am not afraid of heights, but that's just what's coming to my brain. So that could be a limitation for me, but for someone else, they look at me in judgment or observation of, well, I don't relate to that, right? So there's separation right there in that thought or that construct. If I share that I'm fearful of something and another person shares that they're not, and they can't understand or grasp or just observe that I have a fear that they don't, right away that creates an energy of judgment when there's lack of observation or lack of connection. So the next step that I keep thinking about is when we go to a deeper layer. So let's say I say, I'm fearful of heights, and the person says, well, I'm not, that's crazy. But then the person says, well, why? What's the reason? I didn't even plan for this to be an example. But so basically what this does is this creates a dialogue, right? For us to feel connected, even if our limitations are different. So I feel like what's important to talk about right now is individual separation and fear, anxiety and energy, and then collective fear and separation, okay? And how the self, as we know, thoughts come in, okay? And then thoughts create reality. So a thought can come in that I'm going to do this video, and then I take action to bring it into fruition, right? So this is how we create, okay? So we have the ability as individuals to have thought and create, and we have the ability to create in a way that is of inspiration, or we have the ability to create which is in fear, and then there's a whole big gray space in between that, okay? So those are just the two spectrums. So I always say, when I do this work, I have to be inspired to do this work. My journey has always, the inspiration has hit me first emotionally, and then I act. Okay, so I'm not a person that can just go through and, let's say, I'm going to teach this, and I'm going to teach this every week, and I'm going to teach this every month. It's not how it works for me. For me, the inspiration has to come first. That means the actual lesson in my physical world. A lesson comes in. And usually the lessons come in, which like they come in for most of us, are challenges. which through this work I've learned the challenges present an opportunity. Okay, so the opportunity is to be able to see wider, to feel at a deeper level. So, okay, now I'm going to go into that for a minute because that's what I'm feeling. So, I've talked before about how pain, when we go into the pain, it can bring us into love. It can bring us into joy. Okay, so there's two spectrums of emotion. Okay. So separation, fear energy, ultimately is self-judgment or the fear of judgment from others. So what I keep thinking about is like, let's just talk about the illness that's happening right now. So individually, if we put the concept together, which is my thoughts create my reality and your thoughts create your reality, and I'm functioning in my own limitations and you're functioning in your own limitations. So when a situation that's presented collectively, what's happening now is that it's going to hit me differently because of my limitations, and it's going to hit you and affect you differently because of your limitations. But what happens in that is what I keep seeing and observing in people is judgment. So I keep seeing people write on, Facebook or on the news or whatever, if those people would just stay home, if these people would just do this. Okay, well, I want to go in a little deeper than that because first of all, if something's coming into me and I have the concept and understanding that on a collective scale, we have been living for a long time in self-judgment and self-fear and self-limitations. Now, slowly, people have broken out of that, right? Everyone has their own story, their own journey of how they've broken through their own limitations or what they thought they couldn't do, and then they were able to do it, or their fears of being judged, right? That's part of my story. I was fearful when I started to understand about how I communicate with spirit, and I was fearful to come out in the open and say that because I was afraid people would judge me. But slowly I broke out of that. So my point is, individually, we're all having a certain emotion, which is connected to what's happening on a universal collective scale. So it's impacting each of us differently, which it should, because we're all processing within our own limitations, our own expansion. Okay, so what I'm able to do at this time is to observe what people are doing and how they're interacting. And I can remove myself from the aspect of, I'm going to judge you because you react this way in this situation, right? Or, okay, so I'm thinking about, so the judgment comes in my own thoughts first, okay? So if I go to the thought space of, oh my gosh, if all these people would just stay in their house, then everyone would be okay, and this would end for all of us longer, right? This would end quicker, right? It wouldn't go as long. Right away in that thought, connected deeper than just that statement, is I have no personal power. Everybody else in their choices affect me and imprison me. There's self-imprisonment in other people having the power of if they're listening or if they're not, if they're following the rules or if they're not, right? I mean, of course, me and how my perception is all an illusion, okay? It's gonna hit your emotional body and your physical body based on your limitations. So if you live a life where you reside in a space of self-judgment, and now we all do this, but I'm talking about the majority of the time. So for the most part of my daily walk, I I feel inspired, and I feel in my purpose. And we all have our own internal struggles, right? So there's always this overcoming aspect. We all have different things we're overcoming or speaking our truth about. But what the judgment energy really does is creates more isolation. So I keep thinking about, and I don't want to like put people on blast, but of course I connect certain frames of reference to my family. So I keep thinking, if, let's say, someone in my family or someone of my friends, feels a specific way in their life journey, but doesn't feel that they can share how they feel, because in other people's minds, even people that we would say maybe love us, right? They will judge us because maybe it's not the norm to feel that way, or it's not, I just feel like I want to keep going back to the separation that we all already live in, and the separation from self that we all already live in. We're all operating in this place many times where we're afraid to speak our truth, or, we have to act a certain way. We have to look a certain way. We have to be a certain way. I was doing the video with Jen last week for Zoom, and I was like, oh my gosh, I look crazy. Blah, 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 blah. And I was in self-judgment, right? I was in self-criticism, which automatically lowers my vibration and makes me feel isolated, or makes me feel, right? And then I have Jen there saying, stop, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. So then we have these people around us who build us up, who make us feel like it's safe to be ourselves. So slowly what's happened in my life is more people have come in that help me to do that, in support of what my mission is or what my purpose is. And so we all have those certain people that we know we can turn to without fail. I call them my ride or dies, that will support us no matter what we're doing, what our choices are. So I keep wanting to go back to, the way we're interacting right now in this situation that we're being presented with. And the concept, again, back to isolation of self or self-judgment. Then we're also, I keep seeing something in my mind and I'm like trying to go away from it, but I guess I'm supposed to talk about it. So let's just say, we all are supposed to be isolated in our houses right now, but someone has to go out to the store to get groceries, right? Well, one person's going to think, well, it's not worth the risk, right? And another person's going to think, their internal thought is, I feel safe to go do what I need to do or get done what I need to do, right? But that person who feels that way has a choice in that moment to go, do I trust myself and my own intuition and my own safety? Or do I listen to what others tell me? Okay? And of course, anyone in my family knows I'm the one who's not going to listen to what everyone tells me. And I'm sure it's given my mom, anyone who knows me knows. Okay? Well, my job here, I already know, is to think for myself and to act for myself and to create a new way of being and to show people that it's okay to be this way. It's okay to have your own thoughts. It's okay to honor your own truth. It's okay to express yourself even amidst if someone's going to judge you or how they're going to respond or how they're going to react. So slowly I've learned that it's okay and it's safe for me to be me. And of course, collectively looking at what we're going through right now, I am in observation of wishing that for other people. I am wishing for people to trust their own intuition, to trust even when they're watching the news. You can easily get sucked into the fear energy, the energy of, run for the hills, right? Hide, shelter. But there's also a way of being in observation, to observe what's on the news, but not to let it control how you're interacting with yourself and with others. So I guess what this whole point of this video is really a call to ask yourself, in what places in my life am I suppressing or isolating myself because of fear of judgment? And so that's just the small part of what collectively is happening. So collectively, if thoughts create environment and create action, okay, collectively, I already know we're in an imbalance. Okay, we're in an imbalance of love and caring and compassion and generosity. And I see different people right now coming out with that. I see the people, and it's the people I'm not surprised of, right? It's these people that they will go into the fire, right? The firefighters, that's what I see in my head. They know what they're going into, but every day they go into that, right? They have chosen the life path of standing up and providing for others and supporting each other. And so I guess what my thoughts are too is that we all can be that. We all can be in a space of, which I know we're not all going to be, but that's just my hope in my, fantasy world. We're all going to be asking ourselves right now, on a smaller scale of what's happening collectively. If I feel in isolation right now, and many in the world feel in isolation right now, how long have we been surviving in our own isolation of self? How long have we been going through the motions of life and not fully expanding what it is to be self, right? And trusting my intuition and observing people and in a space of observation instead of judgment, right? Because the majority of interactions I have are really good, but I will oftentimes see and have awareness of the judgment energy right in my face, right? And we all have this a little bit, but I'm really talking about the core of it, which is the self-judgment, which leads to self-isolation. So I just feel like collectively, if I look right now, everyone's, right? Everyone, I say, is in their house, right? Even though they're not, but I'm just, okay? Everyone's in their house isolated. So physically isolation, okay? But the thought process of isolation has led to the physical isolation. And we've all been operating, a lot of us, I'm not going to say all because that's very black and white. A lot of us have been operating in the mind isolation for a long time. And self-imposed imprisonment, self-imposed judgment, anxiety, right? Fear, And basically my point is too, is that what we feed ourselves, so intellectually, mentally, physically, emotionally, I don't know if I said that, but the music we listen to, the things that we watch on TV, the people that are around us, it feeds to our own awareness of self. And it can either feed our self-critic or it can feed our self-empowerment, our freedom, right? So what I noticed through my journey is every single cycle that came through each year in different stages of where I was given a challenge, but was actually an opportunity to overcome something in regards to honoring my own truth, right? Stepping into my power every season, stepping a little more into my power, releasing myself of the self-critic, releasing myself of self-judgment, so we all have this, but it's a spectrum. So every season I do that, it frees me more to trust my intuition more, to trust and it releases me from self-judgment, which then in turn releases me from judging others, right? There was a lot of things younger I would say, oh, I would never do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, then the universe brought me that lesson and then flipped me on the other side of it to say, I guess I shouldn't judge, right? So now I have this way about me, which most people know. People will come to me that are strangers, right? And they trust me to deliver spirit for them, and then they in part tell me about their personal lives. But it's energetic. It's energetic. So it's created in emotions, it's created in the mind, it's created in my heart space. So my job and my true self is to be in observation, is to be in service. So, and I guess my hope for this collective lesson that's happening right now with the illness that's spreading is that we recognize that the isolation that we're facing right now, which is the physical part, is a cultivation of the mental part, which many of us need to break out of and break free from. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's a slow, conscious decision of, how can I honor myself today? How can I be of service today? How can I bring joy in today, right? There's so many things. Slowly I had to learn, over the past 6 years or so, how to trust myself again. So when I was younger, I was really in that space of like, rah, I know what I know. Nobody can tell me any different. But through through the years, then I created this space of like listening to people around me and not trusting myself. So I would have this internal fight or this internal struggle of, well, I feel this, but then they're saying this, right? So slowly what's happened over the past 6 years for me is me stepping into my power of that, where I know as I know, what my intuition says. So slowly I came to, I trust my intuition more than anybody, what anyone can tell me. So even when it comes to, let's say, this illness, it doesn't matter what anyone tells me. Intuition wise, I know as I know what this is coming in for, what it's coming in to teach us individually and collectively. My hope is that we're getting the lesson and that it doesn't have to be grander in scale next time, because again, we are creators. So our thoughts cultivate their energy. Okay, so consciously choosing to observe or to try to understand someone as opposed to separating ourselves. I mean, we all see this every day, right? By religion, by color, by country, by this, right? We're all in this observation of like, and we have very two end of the spectrums too. We have those people who are like, everyone's the same, everyone's human, right? Everyone should be treated equally. And then we have the far end of the other scale where it's, my country's better, my this is better, my that is better, take care of yourself first. Okay, yes, take care of yourself first, but be aware that every person is a mirror image of us. And one of my first teachings from Spirit was, I kept wanting to see God. I kept asking, show me God. I want to see what God is. I want to see what God looks like, right? And one night I had this very powerful meditation, and all these people's faces flashed in my mind's eye at a rapid speed. And I kept hearing, this is God, nonstop, over and over. And I always would say, there's more, do your own research, basically. Trust yourself, what you feel your God is. But for my intuition and my own experience, I will always tell people, it's the experience that teaches you truth. It's the experience that teaches spiritual wisdom. It's the experience that teaches you how to love. It's the experience. It's all about the experience. So when I had that, and there's been many powerful experiences, but that was one of them. And when I realized on a mass scale that what God is a collective of all of us and all of our souls, how can I, with that experience, look at someone else in judgment in any way? Because every person is God, and it's in me too, right? So for me, collectively, it was that created unity in me. That created an understanding for me that I wanted to extend more compassion. I wanted to understand people even more, right? So I hope that you guys get something from this. I keep asking Spirit, what other ways can I show up during this time? And it's all the times, it's how can I, each season is how can I show up more? How can I show up for more people? And Spirit is the one that leads the way with that. So, inspiration of what I'm supposed to teach, even recently Jen and I are putting together the intuition class, because we really want to teach people that you have to trust self. You have to get to a space where you know that you're connected. You know that you have the power. You have the ability of discernment, of compassion, of understanding. And we have the choice energetically where we want to sit. We have the choice. I always say go through the pain and out of it. My experience is when a challenge comes in, which hits me emotionally, which feels like, oh, I can't overcome this, right? Whatever it is, I go into it because I know when I go into it, I'm revealed through it. Okay. So, and you'll hear me say these things over and over again because it's just this process that I take. And I feel like most of the people who follow me or I'm going to reach are going to understand that aspect of, right? As human beings, we go through these different things in life, and at first we feel like it's going to be the end of the world, and then we break through it and we overcome it, and we learn something about ourselves and we learn something about others. Now, many times, unfortunately, through experiences, we get to choose again, right? So we get to choose if I'm the victim or if they're the victim or who's to blame. But I reside in a space that no one is to blame. That each person brings me an opportunity, which can also be called a challenge, to learn and to grow myself and my own soul. So even the people who could have, or will hurt me the most, I know that there's a lesson in that, because in a soul understanding, they're a mirror image of myself. So I just feel to think about these things, to think about the self, to think about how we create our thoughts, how then it creates our environment, how then we take action in regards to that, how separation and fear energy on a collective scale right now is showing us an imbalance in ourselves. That's ultimately what it's doing. The illness that's spreading, or the darkness in the world, the bad things in the world, it's a mirror of our self-imprisonment, our self-judgment, our thoughts, our separation of I'm better or you're better. It's just revealing itself to us so that our eyes can see it. Our physical eyes can see it happening. So, and the energy is moving very fast. So on top of that, I have to add that from the beginning, weeks ago, before this all came in, I kept seeing fog come in, but Spirit kept telling me that the fog was moving fast. So the energy is moving fast right now. And whoever's going to pick up the lesson is going to pick up the lesson, and who's not is not. And hopefully there will be some aspects of awareness in the days to come, but these are just things to think about, and it doesn't have to be all serious and doom and gloom, but it's just self-actualization, right? How can I expand past my own understanding? So I think that's all I have to say. I'm looking at my notes that I wrote. I wrote, create self-imprisonment. Judgment of self, judgment of others, creates self-imprisonment. Takes your personal power away and takes you from self, which is intuition. So to get back to self, you have to separate those energies out and start to cultivate and really trust yourself and trust your own guidance. And there's a lot of different tools you can use to do that. And as you start to do that, people will come into your life who support that. And you probably already have some people in your life that support that. But the more you honor it, the more people will come in to support it. All right. Peace out, guys. Love you all. Hopefully, this is helpful in some capacity.